Waffles, and I'm a government whistleblower turned political commentator. Welcome to part 5 of why Donald Trump's policies are bad for the economy. Today we're going to talk about the creation of conflict zones. Let's dive in on how conflict-ridden areas act as powerful destabilizers for economies. Here's a breakdown of key ways such conflicts undermine economic health. Together, they shed light on why peace and stability are such strong foundations for prosperity. How conflict zones undermine economic stability. Direct destruction of economic contraction. Armed conflicts typically devastate physical capital, destroying infrastructure, disrupting labor, and reducing production capacity. For instance, conflicts in Lebanon, Kuwait, and Iraq led to sharp GDP contractions, inflation, and deteriorating fiscal health. A study shows that per capita GDP often falls by about 15% within a year of conflict and can drop as much as 28% over a decade. That's according to a study that was conducted by the International Monetary Fund. Trade disruption and supply chain breakdown. Conflict zones shut down trade routes, fragment markets, and severely impair commerce. This leads to higher transport costs, shortages, inflation, and business closures. Investor confidence and financial instability. Conflict elevates perceived political risk, resulting in capital flight, lower investment, and market volatility. Even after the violence subsides, investor confidence often remains low for extended periods. Stock markets and housing prices often take lasting hits in and around conflict regions, as seen in the Israel, Palestine, and Lebanon conflicts. Humanitarian and capital flow impacts in Nigeria. Boko Haram's attacks forced many businesses in Kano to shut down, banks to limit hours, and foreign investors to pull out, costing the economy an estimated $1.33 trillion in investments. Refugee flows and displaced populations strain neighboring economies, though through lost workforce, increased aid demands, and social costs. Spillover and ripple effects. Instability doesn't stay put, it ripples across borders. Nearby countries often experience trade declines, increased military spending, and economic slowdown. Recent data shows conflict zones grew by 65% over 3 years, disrupting food security and supply chains from Ukraine to Sahel. That's according to The Guardian. Inflation and commodity shocks. Conflict, especially in oil-rich regions, inflames energy prices and boosts inflation, raising production costs, squeezing consumers, and pressuring central banks. Markets may initially fall, but often recover unless conflict is prolonged or escalates severely. Policy shifts and budget strain. Governments allocate more towards defense and security during conflicts, often at the expense of critical sectors like education and healthcare. This dampens long-term development and economic resilience. Conflict-ridden regions not only bear immense human tragedy, but also become economic drag forces. Post-conflict recovery can happen. Ending violence often triggers an increase in investments, and investing in conflict resolution pays dividends. Political stability and rebuilding trust are essential to restoring thriving economies. Conflict zones serve as a powerful economic deterrents, not just locally but globally. For a forward-looking world, prioritizing peace isn't just moral, it's a strategic investment in global prosperity. So we are going to talk about ICE, and we are also going to talk about the deployment of the National Guard against the American people and why this is a problem. I am an American. This is happening in my country, and I have every reason to have concern about it and also to engage in discourse, as it is my political right to talk about these things. It is my First Amendment right. Deploying the U.S. military against U.S. citizens in Los Angeles can cause economic harm and destabilization in much of the same way conflict-ridden areas undermine their own economies. The shock would be entirely internal, eroding trust in government and disrupting a major economic hub. Los Angeles is the second largest city in the U.S. and a global trade, entertainment, and logistics center. Military deployment against civilians is likely to trigger business closures, both from safety concerns and direct damage. Shipping delays at the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which handle about 40% of U.S. container imports. And tourism collapse. LA is a major international travel destination, and fear of unrest could cut hotel, restaurant, and retail revenue. Capital flight and investment freeze. Domestic and foreign investors interpret military force against civilians as a sign of political instability. Pullback of venture capital from LA's tech and entertainment sectors. Stock market volatility as consumer confidence drops. Credit downgrades or state municipal bonds due to perceived instability. Damage to labor market and employment. Military action could force workplace shutdowns in high-density areas, cause job losses in industries like tourism, film, and logistics, and lead to a short-term spike in unemployment from disrupted businesses. Long-term, it may accelerate migration out of LA, draining talent and reducing tax revenue. Consumer confidence collapse. People spend less when they feel unsafe. In an environment where citizens are facing military force, you'd expect sharp reduction in local spending on discretionary goods, increased cash withdrawals and bank runs by those fearing prolonged instability, higher savings rates in short term, which reduces demand and slows economic growth. Infrastructure and property damage. Military intervention in civilian area risks damage to roads, utilities, and public spaces from vehicles, barricades, or conflict. Destruction of private property, homes, and businesses. These costs compound as insurance claims spike, premiums rise, and rebuilding diverts public funds away from growth projects. Long-term reputation damage. LA brands itself as a safe, creative global city. Images of U.S. military firing on or detaining U.S. citizens could hurt global tourism and international student enrollment. Scare away film productions and events like the Olympics in 2028, which could be jeopardized. Reduce real estate investment from foreign buyers who often place billions into LA's housing market. Potential for escalation and spillover. Military action against civilians sets a precedent. Other protests or political gatherings across California and beyond might see heightened tension and unrest. This could increase statewide law enforcement costs, cause interstate trade slowdowns if ports or trucking routes are disrupted, and spread instability to other urban hubs, multiplying economic damage. Deploying the U.S. military against citizens in Los Angeles could transform one of America's most productive regions into a conflict zone, shrinking economic output, driving away investment, and eroding trust in both government and markets. Even short-term unrest could cost billions, while long-term reputational and structural damage could take decades to repair. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Trump administration being rude to our foreign allies, while countries that previously and recently were our foreign allies, countries like Canada, threatening those countries and also arresting their citizens. In my observations of the news, I found footage of a Canadian man who said that ICE had crossed the border and then illegally detained him. I am unable to currently find that story while I am digging through all of the crap on the internet because a lot has been happening in a very short period of time. But what I can say is when I look this up, when I try to find this, I find Canadian arrested by ICE at green card interview. Woman detained for 12 days after applying for a work visa. Canadian woman put in chains, detained by ICE after entering the U.S. from Mexico. A man was turned away at the Canadian border. Canadian woman describes 11 days in ICE custody. Canadian. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on people from Canada getting detained, including what appears to be people dying in custody. ICE kidnapping our citizens. Canadian MP issues travel warning. MP Charlie Angus warns Canadians to avoid traveling to the U.S. due to arbitrary detentions and denial of rights of citizens. That's the Economic Times. The Trump administration has been rude to other countries and arresting their citizens if they come here. When a U.S. administration like Trump's treats other countries' citizens rudely or targets them for arrest upon arrival, it creates both direct economic harm and long-term strategic losses. Examples of this, tourism decline. And tourism is a major U.S. export industry. I live by a national park. We actually rely on tourism quite a bit. We make our money in the summer out here. And, it's not good to see tourism on decline. Tourism is a major U.S. export industry. Foreign visitors spend about $233 billion in the U.S. That was in 2019. If visitors fear harassment, detention, or humiliation at U.S. borders, fewer international tourists come, slashing hotel, restaurant, retail, and attraction revenue. Large conventions, sports events, and cultural festivals lose international attendance and investment. Example, after the 2017 travel ban and negative diplomatic incidents, when Trump was president, inbound tourism from targeted countries dropped significantly, costing billions in lost spending. Loss of international students. Many foreign students bring tuition dollars and living expenses to the U.S. In 2019, they contribute $41 billion to the economy. Hostile treatment makes the U.S. less attractive, pushing students towards Canada, the U.K., or Australia. Loss of international talent means fewer skilled workers in critical industries after graduation. Trade retaliation. Countries often respond to perceived disrespect or mistreatment of their citizens by imposing tariffs or tightening customs checks on U.S. exports, canceling trade deals or slowing negotiations, redirecting import contracts to friendlier nations. This can cost U.S. farmers, manufacturers, and tech companies billions in lost sales. Weakened foreign investment. When foreign investors feel their country's citizens are mistreated, they pull back from buying U.S. real estate, bonds, or business shares. Sovereign wealth funds may redirect billions to other markets. Investment loss slows job creation and infrastructure growth, especially in cities like New York, Miami, and Los Angeles that rely heavily on foreign capital. Diplomatic strain hurts business partnerships. Rudeness and arrests damage diplomatic relations, making business visas harder to get, joint ventures riskier and slower to approve, international mergers and acquisitions less likely. Companies lose out on global supply chain opportunities and expansion. Brain drain and talent barriers. Skilled workers, engineers, doctors, entrepreneurs avoid the U.S. if they fear mistreatment. This reduces innovation capacity and makes it harder to fill critical jobs, especially in STEM and healthcare. Reputation damage. With long-term cost, the U.S. brand has economic value. Trust in the American system drives tourism, investment, and global partnerships. Systematic rudeness and targeted arrests erode that trust, and reputational recovery can take decades. Hostile treatment of other countries' citizens doesn't just damage relationships, it directly costs the U.S. billions of dollars through lost tourism, investment, trade, and talent. Over time, it can shift global economic networks away from the U.S., making recovery far harder, even if policy changes later. Kidnapping foreign citizens who are visiting the U.S., whether done by a government or with government complicity, is one of the fastest ways to push an international relationship from diplomatic tension into open conflict. Here's how and why it could escalate into war. Violation of international law under treaties like the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. Foreign visitors are protected from arbitrary detention or kidnapping. Breaking these agreements signals the U.S. is willing to ignore binding international law, opens the door for other nations to take reciprocal hostile actions. Provocation and retaliation. If another country believes its citizens were abducted, they could arrest U.S. citizens abroad in retaliation. This can rapidly escalate into a tit-for-tat hostage crisis. Even if the original act is framed as law enforcement, the optics and political framing abroad can turn it into a national insult. Diplomatic breakdown. Kidnapping is viewed as an act of aggression. Countries may expel U.S. diplomats, shut down embassies and cut off negotiations, cancel military and intelligence sharing agreements. Once diplomatic channels are severed, misunderstandings become more likely to spiral into armed confrontation. Military escalation risk. If the abducted individuals are high profile, such as diplomats, journalists, or relatives of government officials, their home country may deploy military forces to protect citizens abroad, increase military readiness, and mobilize near U.S. bases overseas, intercept U.S. military or commercial ships and planes. These actions increase the risk of accidental clashes that could ignite larger conflicts. Economic warfare turning into physical warfare. Initial retaliation often begins economically, freezing U.S. assets, imposing trade sanctions, cutting off critical exports, e.g. rare earth minerals and energy. As economic measures bite, domestic political pressure in both countries can make leaders feel forced to act tough, leading to military operations being considered. Alliance dynamics. If the targeted country is part of a military alliance, kidnapping their citizens could trigger mutual defense commitments under agreements like Article 5. This means a local diplomatic dispute could suddenly pull multiple countries into coordinated military action. Historic parallels. The Iran hostage crisis, 1979 to 1981, while not exactly the same as kidnapping tourists, show how seizing foreign nationals creates years-long hostility, cripples diplomatic relations, and raises the risk of armed conflict. In 2018, Saudi Arabia-Canada dispute over human rights arrests saw major diplomatic and economic fallout, proof that even non-military detentions can destabilize relationships quickly. Kidnapping foreign visitors transforms a political disagreement into a personal and national humiliation for the targeted country. It results in sanctions, loss of trade, and long-term diplomatic damage. Worst case, it triggers retaliatory arrests, military deployments, and an armed conflict, especially if alliances or national pride are at stake. Now let's highlight some real incidents under the Trump administration that show hostile treatment of visiting foreign citizens, which can inflame tensions and sow seeds of diplomatic crisis. German, Canadian, and British tourists detained. Foreign tourists, despite having valid visas, have been stopped, detained, and in some cases deported under aggressive enforcement. A German tattoo artist and hiker were detained, held in custody, one for over a month, even though they arrived legally. A Canadian entrepreneur was arrested while trying to obtain a new visa, and a British tourist was held in detention simply for holding a travel, not work, visa. These incidents not only create shockwaves among travelers, but also prompt foreign governments and citizens to question the U.S. as a safe or welcoming destination. Detentions at immigration courts and trap tactics. Immigration enforcement intensified even inside courthouses. Agents have been waiting outside immigration hearings, arresting individuals, often asylum seekers, right after their hearing, despite no criminal charges. In one heartbreaking case, a Cuban man's hopes for legal relief were dashed when he was suddenly detained after a judge had dismissed his case. Such tactics erode trust in U.S. legal fairness and may prompt other nations to retaliate or issue travel advisories. Deportation of Indian nationals via military flight on February 5, 2025, around 104 Indian nationals were deported to India aboard a U.S. military plane, handcuffed and chained, which drew strong condemnation from Indian political leaders. This humiliating treatment triggered diplomatic backlash, with concerns raised in India about dignity and human rights, risking damage to a strategic and economic partnership. Detention of academics and researchers. International scholars faced harsh actions based on speech or associations. Dr. Badar Khan Suri, an Indian academic at Georgetown University, was detained because of his social media posts supporting Palestinian rights and his familial ties, though no criminal charges were filed. Similarly, other scholars and researchers were targeted for expressing dissenting views, raising serious alarm about academic freedom and freedom of speech protections. These incidents can provoke international uproar and complicate higher education exchange programs. Aggressive arrests, even under legal cover, undermines trust in justice and could spur reciprocal measures. Military-style deportations embarrasses host nations and risks triggering official diplomatic protests. Targeting academics or speech damages reputation and academic exchanges and fuels accusations of repression. When such actions accumulate, they diminish goodwill, heighten diplomatic friction, and may lead other countries to take countermeasures ranging from public condemnations to sanctions or retaliation. In extreme cases, escalation from purely diplomatic fallout toward broader strategic conflict becomes possible, especially if allies see U.S. behavior as violating norms. Peace within a nation is crucial because it fosters stability, economic growth, and overall well-being for its citizens. Conflict disrupts economies, while peace allows businesses to flourish, investments to grow, and job opportunities to increase. Nations with internal peace attract more foreign investments and tourism, boosting the economy. Social stability and unity. Peace promotes social cohesion, reducing division and hostility among different groups. It allows for productive dialogue and cooperation instead of violence and unrest. War and internal conflict often lead to human rights abuses. In peaceful societies, people have greater freedoms and are less likely to suffer from oppression and persecution. Citizens in peaceful nations have better access to healthcare, education, and essential services. Less violence means lower crime rates, safer communities, and improved mental health. Peaceful societies are more likely to have functioning democracies or fair governance structures. Governments can focus on development rather than conflict resolution. Nations at peace can invest in research, education, and innovation rather than military expenditures. Art, literature, and culture thrive in peaceful societies, enriching national identity. Peaceful countries tend to have stronger diplomatic relationships and influence on the global stage. They contribute to international cooperation rather than being isolated due to conflict. Peace within a nation directly impacts individuals in profound ways, shaping their daily lives, opportunities, and overall well-being. Personal safety and security. In a peaceful society, individuals don't have to live in constant fear of violence, crime, or war. They can move freely, pursue education and careers, and build their lives without worrying about civil unrest, armed conflict, or government oppression. For families, this means children can grow up in a safe environment, attend school without disruptions, and have a stable future. Living in a conflict-ridden society can cause extreme stress, anxiety, and trauma. Peace allows individuals to experience stability, reducing mental health issues. A peaceful environment fosters a sense of belonging and community where people can form healthy relationships and trust their surroundings. Less violence in a society means lower rates of PTSD, depression, and other psychological struggles that often arise in war-torn or crime-ridden areas. Peace creates a strong economy, allowing individuals to find jobs, start businesses, and achieve financial stability. In conflict zones, schools are often shut down and children are denied their right to an education. Peace ensures that individuals can pursue knowledge and develop their skills, leading to better careers and brighter futures. With economic growth, people can work towards their aspirations instead of merely surviving day to day. In peaceful societies, individuals are more likely to have freedom of speech, political participation, and personal autonomy. They can express their beliefs, vote in fair elections, and advocate for change without fear of persecution. Women, minorities, and marginalized groups have better chances of achieving equality and justice. When a nation is at peace, people can trust one another, work together, and build stronger communities. Less violence and division means individuals can form relationships based on cooperation rather than fear or prejudice. Peace fosters a culture of kindness, mutual respect, and shared progress. In war-torn or violent nations, hospitals and medical services often collapse, leaving individuals without access to health care. A peaceful society allows for better healthcare systems where individuals can receive medical attention, vaccinations, and mental health support. Less violence means fewer injuries and deaths, leading to longer life expectancy and a healthier population. Peace provides the foundation for individuals to focus on their passions, dreams, and self-improvement instead of worrying about survival. People can invest time in learning, creating, and innovating. It enables individuals to contribute positively to their society, whether through art, science, entrepreneurship, or activism. And this is part 5 of why Trump's policies are bad for the economy. This video is about Trump, ICE, and Trump's military deployments creating conflict zones within the U.S. and destabilizing the economy.
So the Olympics is great, and Johnny for the others, you know, the World Cup, Johnny is the head of it. We had our top people, Wasserman. They all came in on the Olympics, and then I saw Johnny, and we got the World Cup too. And you know, it's only because they rigged the election that I'll be your president representing you there. You know, I got both of them. I got the Olympics and I got the World Cup. And I said, you know, it's too bad. One was in 2026 and the other was in 2028. And I said, I won't be there. I won't be your president. But then they rigged the election and now we won. So I'm going to be your president for the Olympics and for the World Cup. So Johnny, thank you for the World Cup. And everybody, thank you for the Olympics. We're going to have a great time.
Hey guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to my videos. And also, don't forget to check out my shop where you could get this awesome Real Patriots Punch Nazis t-shirt. America, fuck yeah! And if you go to the link tree in my bio on most platforms, it's got links to everything, all of my stuff. You can find my shop there. I'm on eBay. You can also get this cool Exterminate MAGA sticker, because MAGA's fucking cockroaches. And fuck MAGA, abolish MAGA, fuck you MAGA.
There's a game in Washington. day.